The legendary 7-star Mewtwo Tera raid is almost here, and today, I'm going to show you everything you need to bring with you to make sure you can take it down, no problem. Let's get started. So yeah, the Mewtwo raid is going to be coming to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet starting on September 1st, and is going to go until September 17th. Now this raid is obviously a big deal because everybody loves Mewtwo, and of course, a lot of the raids have been very difficult in the past before, and Mewtwo is shaping up to be no exception. Also, given that it's going to be the first legendary raid Pokemon has hosted, it's probably going to be even tougher than usual, which is why we need a lot of prep work, which I have done for you, and I'm going to show you guys all the amazing Pokemon I think can take Mewtwo down, no problem. But that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at Mewtwo and see what potentially we're going to be looking at in this fight. Alright, now when we dive into Mewtwo itself, we see that it actually presents some pretty big challenges that we're going to have to overcome to take this Pokemon down. Mewtwo has all these moves that can just cause so many headaches when you're trying to prepare against it. Now, that being said, there is some good news. Don't worry, don't jump ship yet, guys. We can get through this. Mewtwo is Psychic type, and the good news is its Tera typing is also Psychic. That's good because we have some very simple ways to actually do super effective damage to it, and we also have Pokemon that are immune to Psychic attacks in the form of Dark-type Pokemon. Mewtwo's moveset does have a big mix of special and physical moves. That being said, I think special moves are probably going to be more common. Typically, that's how Mewtwo is kind of depicted for Pokemon, and it gives it a lot more options going for special moves, so I don't think it's going to be one or the other. I imagine we're probably going to have mostly special moves and maybe one physical one thrown in there. But that being said, all the Pokemon that I'm going to focus on are going to have a lot of special defense and a lot of HP, just to kind of hedge against the special defense if we do have some physical moves that we're seeing. And tying into that, we see Mewtwo has options like Psychic and Psystrike, both of which are going to be very, very strong due to that Tera typing. Psychic obviously is going to hit against special defense, whereas Psystrike hits against physical defense. But the good news is if we run something like a Light Screen, we still will reduce that Psystrike because it is a special move. It just kind of hits on the other side of damage. If we look at the other things Mewtwo can actually have, it's kind of a Swiss Army knife, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, we see it has Calm Mind, Nasty Plot, and Recover. Right there as potential options are pretty scary, just because it can get very strong and then recover a bunch of HP back up. On top of that, I didn't actually put it on here. It does have access to Light Screen and Reflect too. That's not a major issue for a lot of the sets that I have built for us, but that being said, just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. But when we get into its coverage, I mean, look at this. It's got Aura Sphere, which is fighting, Energy Ball and Trailblaze for grass. It can potentially even have Foul Play. I don't think that's too likely, but it's worth noting it could be. It's got Shadow Ball, Power Gem, Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, Earth Power, Ice Beam, and Hurricane. No matter what Pokemon we bring, there's a very good chance Mewtwo is going to have a super effective move against it, but the best option to get around that being an issue is you just want to make sure that your Pokemon are very bulky, and if it does get hit with a super effective move, that's not going to be stab and super effective because that is a worst case scenario. Now guys, keep in mind, I am doing this video before the raid actually does come out, and before we have any real information about it, because I want to give you guys time to prepare, get your Pokemon together, all that good stuff. The actual raid may have moves that are different than this, or may have moves that are on this sheet. We don't really know. This is really just a list of the things that you need to look out for. But with that being said, how are we going to prepare for this Mewtwo? How are we going to take it down? Well, there is a criteria of things that I'm looking for to make sure that whatever we use can do a lot of damage to Mewtwo and not take too much damage in return. So for the most part, I'm looking for Dark-type Pokemon, or at least Pokemon that have access to a Dark-type. Now yeah, of course, any Pokemon can Tera Dark, which is great, but a lot of times in raids, you may not make it that far if you're not prepared otherwise, so I'd like most of our Pokemon to have the option of being Dark-type, just to try and prevent damage from that Psychic and or Psystrike. We're also looking for Pokemon that can affect stats in some way. So all the Pokemon need to be able to either increase their own stats or decrease Mewtwo's stats. Things like Calm Mind, Nasty Plot, Swords Dance, or even things like Acid Spray or Screech, all are going to be very useful tools because they'll let us get stronger and let Mewtwo get weaker, making it that much easier to KO. And lastly, I'm also tending to look for Pokemon that do have a lot of special defense or a lot of HP. If a Pokemon can be taken out by Mewtwo in one shot, even if it's not super effective, it's not really going to do a whole lot for us, and maybe more of a hindrance than a help to beating this Mewtwo raid. Now, the very first Pokemon that you should consider using in this raid is going to be Mew. Now yeah, I realize it doesn't have the Dark-type criteria that I just listed, but just bear with me. Mew is the choice that Pokemon kind of wants us to use for this raid, just because they're kind of hyping it up as like a Mew versus Mewtwo kind of thing. So if you use Mew in this raid, it is going to get a 50% boost to its HP and a 20% boost to every other stat. So It is pretty darn good to use this, even though it is going to still be taking those psychic attacks. But given that you're getting that 20% boost to everything, it does really make it a very solid choice for the raid. Now, on top of that, Mew is also very easy to get in your Scarlet and Violet games. There is an event going on right now to get Mew. All you have to do is go to your mystery gifts and type in get your Mew. The O in your is going to be a 0, not an O, because that's not a character. I don't know. Pokemon does this a lot. They think it's real clever, but in any event, just go ahead, type that in, get your Mew. And what you may find is that your Mew does not have the Dark typing. Now, obviously, we are going to want to make it Dark Tera type, just so if we do get to that point in the battle, we can become a Dark type Pokemon, and then we are going to be immune to those psychic attacks. And if you need to change your Mew around to that typing, just go and get 50 Dark Tera shards, and go to the Treasure Eatery and Medley, and you can change it there, no problem. Now, the thing about Mew is you can use pretty much any move on it, any move tutor, any TM, anything like that is going to be able to give Mew a move. So there are a lot of options. That being said, all the Pokemon that we're going to be looking at today are basically going to be designed to be single uses against Mewtwo. A lot of people online will have these weird strategies where it's like 3 support Pokemon and 1 other one. Sure, all of that works wonderfully. If you want to do that, go for it. The main issue with that for me is just that it takes a lot of coordination, and I imagine most people are just going to want to kind of sit down, grab their Pokemon, throw it in battle, and start kicking butt. And that's what a lot of my sets are designed to do today. So with that all in mind, here's my Mew build. It's kind of a build that's been going around online for a while, but I still want to cover it just to make sure you guys know what we have available. So for its held item, it's going to have Shell Bell, so it can recover some HP whenever it deals damage, and ideally, we're going to be doing a lot of damage, so hopefully we get a lot of HP back. For its EV spread, we're going to have 252 HP and 252 special defense. We just want to have it maxed out in both categories, just to make sure, again, we can take as much damage as possible. And for the actual moves itself, we have Nasty Plot, Acid Spray, Amnesia, and Dark Pulse. Now, you may notice that 3 of those moves adjust stats, and that's because we really want to focus on getting stronger and making Mewtwo weaker. Now, the Nasty Plot and Amnesia is to raise our special attack and our special defense. Now, you could basically do this with Calm Mind. The only thing I think you get a benefit here is to get maxed out with Calm Mind, you'd have to take 6 turns. With Nasty Plot, you only need to take 3, and then you can also just use 1 Amnesia or so to get that little defense boost, just to kind of help you out there. With Acid Spray, we're also going to be reducing Mewtwo's special defense, so when we do get around to unleashing our super effective Dark Pulses, it's going to do a lot of damage. Now, I highly recommend you use that Mew to take it down, just in case there is also some kind of special mark or any other kind of bonus for actually like cooperating with the storyline. But maybe you just want to farm Mewtwo for the experience. Maybe you just want to get the drops if it has any really cool items. Who knows? We can only catch 1, but you can still battle it and take it down to get those items. So let's talk about some Pokemon that may be just as effective, if not better than that Mew. All right, now one last thing, just kind of a warning here. A lot of the Pokemon we're going to talk about in the start here are going to be coming from Pokemon Home. Now, if you don't have that, don't have any Mons to transfer in, just kind of bear with me. You can use the timestamps below. After we talk about the Pokemon from Pokemon Home, I am going to have some Pokemon that are found natively in Scarlet and Violet. And while they may not be as strong as some of these legendaries, they're still pretty darn good, and I think are still really good options for you. All right, now we're going to start off on a high note here with Arceus Dark. Now, unfortunately, it can't hold a Shell Bell. It does have to hold that Dread Plate to become Dark type, but that's okay because it has 120 for all of its stats, which is awesome. And again, we are going to supplement that with the Calm Nature, maxed out HP, and special defense. We are going to be using that Calm Mind basically because we need to consolidate our moves a little bit, because we also want to incorporate Recover. It's just too good of an option not to use, and if you get smacked down a whole bunch, after a Calm Mind, you can recover all that back up, and you'll be pretty much all set. Now, we also have Acid Spray like we had previously with the Mew, and we have Judgment, which is a special attacking move, which is going to do a lot of damage because it's going to be Stab, and will also be Dark type, and because it's super effective against that Mewtwo, it's going to do quite a lot of damage. Now, in order to get the Dread Plate to turn your Arceus into the Dark type, you are going to have to go to Porto Marinata and participate in the auctions there. Now, I know that this is kind of a difficult process and can take quite a lot of time, so if you don't have the Dark Plate available, it's not a big deal. I have a lot of other Pokemon that we can use, and let's take a look at those now. Now, Chi-Yu is one of the few non-home legendaries that we are going to be talking about, and it does have a lot of really cool things about it that make it a very good counter for Mewtwo. So we are going to be using a Shell Bell on it again because it does have good special defense and stats like that, but its HP is not great. So again, we just want to recover as much HP as possible, but its ability Beads of Ruin automatically reduces Mewtwo's special defense, so we're going to do a lot more damage to it, which is just fantastic. Now, you guys may catch on to a trend here with our Natures and our EVs. They're pretty much all going to be maxed out HP, special defense, and a boosting special defense nature. So in terms of that, we're not really going to be reinventing the wheel because it's already just the best plan. For its moves, we're going to have, first of all, Light Screen to just kind of give us a little more longevity in the special attacking area. But on top of that, we have Nasty Plot, again, to boost our special attack very high. I decided to also use Snarl, because the cool thing is it's going to be stab super effective, so when you're like a, +4, +6 special attack, Snarl will still do a decent amount of damage and reduce Mewtwo's special attack. It's going to give our Pokemon just a little more longevity, but I don't recommend that as like the main takedown move. That's going to be our Dark Pulse, and it'll just do a lot of consistent damage, which is really just all we're looking for. And speaking of heavy hitters, I cannot recommend highly enough Hoopa Unbound. Now, this is probably by far the hardest Pokemon to get on this entire list, because you do have to have an event Pokemon from before Gen 8, I believe, and you're going to have to transfer that into Pokemon Home and then get that into Scarlet and Violet that way. But it is going to have arguably one of the most powerful movesets that we have available to us, which I think is just fantastic. So that being said, for the set, we are going to be using Nasty Plot and Calm Mind. Hoopa does not have a great way to boost its own special defense independently of Calm Mind. So we're going to be going for Calm Mind, but given that Hoopa already has such good stats, we're going to just need maybe one or two of those. And when you use it in combination with Light Screen, we'll be in a pretty good spot to not take too much damage, especially when we're recovering HP with Shell Bell. What I think you should really go for here is maybe like 1, 2, or 3 Calm Minds, and then use a Nasty Plot. And the reason why, we don't want to invest, again, too many turns in just using Calm Mind. We don't want to spend 6 turns to get to that point where we're maxed out on our special attack, just to get that special defense up. Because by that point, Mewtwo may remove our boosts. It may even, already do so much damage to us that we're knocked out. So we kind of want to speed things up. So for basically the same amount of benefit, you could get 2 Calm Minds, a Nasty Plot, and a Light Screen, and then an attack off. So that's why I have both of those boosting options on there, just to kind of use our time very efficiently. Now, if you don't know, Hoopa Unbound has one of the highest special attacks, ever, clocking in at a massive 170. So any boosts we get are going to make that Dark Pulse do a ton of damage. Now, when you get your Hoopa, most likely it is going to be in just the normal confined form. So what you're going to have to do is get the Prison Bottle to turn it into its Unbound form. Now, unfortunately, that is another case where you're going to have to go to the Porto Morinda auctions and win it there, which I realize that is pretty darn awful. So if you don't have the Prison Bottle or don't have a lot of time to get one, you may need to kind of go network with your friends to find somebody that has the Prison Bottle. But once you do get it, it does really unlock this really powerful Pokemon for us. Now, one Pokemon that I think is really cool, but kind of throws out the whole convention that we've had so far, is Urshifu Single Strike, or the Urshifu Dark. Now, in full disclosure, Urshifu has really bad special defense, but it has some things that I think are very unique about it that make it a reasonable choice to use here. Now, we do have kind of the traditional, Shell Bell, EV nature stuff that we already talked about. Just kind of don't worry about that. We're going to be using Swords Dance to get our already high physical attack even higher. Ideally, we want to get it all the way to +6. And the other moves that we see here are Brick Break and Sucker Punch. Now, Urshifu being Fighting Dark, it is going to be immune to those Psychic type attacks. But what I am worried about is the fact that Mewtwo does have a lot of those different coverage moves. And even something like a Flamethrower against Urshifu is still going to do a lot of damage. So the reason I'm including Sucker Punch is Mewtwo is going to be faster. So if we can get one of those attacks off before we're KO'd, like if we see the writing on the wall, we're still going to be able to do a lot to it, just because we are going to have, again, stab super effective Sucker Punches. And if they are boosted, it's going to do quite a healthy amount to Mewtwo. I have Brick Break on here in case we have like a Light Screen or a Reflect. You may have to kind of just take one for the team, but if you're able to break those screens, the other 3 Pokemon with you are going to be able to do a lot more damage to it. But the real reason I think Urshifu shines here is because of Wicked Blow. Now, let's get the obligatory Giggity out of the way there, but the thing about Wicked Blow that's really cool is that it always does a critical hit, so it's always going to do the most amount of damage possible to that Pokemon. And for example, if we're able to get Urshifu to +6, against a normal, traditional Mewtwo, even if you max it out in HP, defense, all the way, a Wicked Blow at +6 will still kill that Mewtwo 2 times over. Like, it does 200 plus damage to it. The fact that it does that much damage to Mewtwo and can take away so much of its health bar in just one shot, I have to recommend at least trying this thing out, because it really is just that solid. Now, one legendary that seems to be kind of overlooked online right now is going to be Galarian Moltres. Now, what really sets this Pokemon apart is that it has Berserk, which is really fantastic, because if it does go below 50% HP, which, spoiler, is going to happen probably a lot, you're going to be able to actually get a special attack boost, meaning we're probably going to have to spend less turns using Nasty Plot to get stronger. It's also really cool that because we have Shell Bell, if we do go down in HP, we can recover that back up, and if we do dip below 50% again, we are going to get another boost. It's just kind of a neat little option in case Mewtwo does remove our boosts. It does give us a different sort of approach to how to get all those boosts back. Now, as far as the rest of the set, We do have Nasty Plot, which I think is pretty obvious, and the main attacking move is going to be Fiery Wrath. But I did round off the set with Scary Face and Snarl. It's going to give Moltres a lot more bulk because Moltres is already a very, very bulky Pokemon on the special defensive side. So reducing Mewtwo's special attack by just that much more is just going to be fantastic. Galar Moltres is really not that fast. It's pretty good, but just not as fast as Mewtwo. So being able to reduce that speed stat by 2 stages should give Moltres a fair chance of outspeeding it. Now, it may not sound that important, but do consider there's a lot of times where you're going to be on a sliver of HP and you just need to get off 1 or 2 more attacks to take out that Mewtwo before your time runs out. If you're the one moving first because you're faster, you're going to be able to do that, whereas if the Mewtwo were still faster, you're probably going to get KO'd before you're able to take it out. I also think Giratina has a fantastic amount of potential here. If you've ever played Ubers for singles, you know that Giratina is widely known to be one of the bulkiest Pokemon ever. Just make sure you're using its normal altered form and not the origin form, because the altered form is much more bulky. Now here we have a Calm Mind Shadow Ball set. We don't have a dark type here naturally with the Giratina. It is Ghost and Dragon, which has its pros and cons. So we are still going to be vulnerable to psychic type attacks, which is not great, but we are so bulky that I don't really think it matters that much. And if Mewtwo does launch off like Shadow Balls, it is going to be super effective, but again, it won't be stabbed, so I think that's probably going to be fine, just given how bulky Giratina is. I'm rounding out the set with Substitute and Scary Face. Scary Face we already talked about, but Substitute I think is good because if you get up a Substitute early, you may be able to take 1 or 2 hits from that Mewtwo before the Substitute breaks, giving you time to get a few Calm Minds off. And then once your special defense gets high enough, when you create those substitutes, they'll be able to last a lot longer. And even though you are paying a good chunk of your HP to create the substitute, it's going to still give you more longevity in battle, especially when you're gaining that HP back with Shell Bell. Alright, now let's talk about some Pokemon that you can use if you don't want to mess around with Pokemon Home, or just don't want to mess around with some legendaries. Now, I will say, objectively, these Pokemon are not as strong as the previous ones we talked about, but I do think they're a pretty good option, again, if you don't have any other choice. And not to shortchange them, I do think a lot of them do have some potential. They just may not be quite as amazing as what we talked about previously. Now, one of the most obvious ones is going to be Spiritomb. Not only is it Dark type to be immune to Psychic type attacks, it's also Ghost type, so things like Aura Sphere are not going to be doing any damage to it either. It also comes in with the ability Infiltrator, so if Mewtwo does go for screens, you're going to be able to do damage right through that, just like the screens weren't there, and that's pretty good. Now, the set itself is kind of what we've seen before. We have Nasty Plot, Calm Mind, Dark Pulse, and Snarl. Again, we just want to boost our own stats up, reduce Mewtwo's down, and then start unleashing Dark Pulses. Another extremely bulky Pokemon is going to be Umbreon. It's pure Dark, so again, it's going to be immune to Psychic, but it is going to be weak to fighting moves. But with our set here, I think it's actually pretty solid. So we have Calm Mind and Light Screen, which are going to help us not take a lot of damage, but we also have Fake Tears. Now, we haven't talked about that too much today yet, just because a lot of Pokemon don't have this move, but Fake Tears is kind of like an acid spray. It reduces Mewtwo's special defense, so when you start unleashing your Dark Pulses that are potentially going to be at +6, that's going to do quite a lot of damage to Mewtwo. Just having those boosts in there, plus those special defense boosts, you're going to be lasting a long time and chipping away very consistently, even if you're not just one-hitting the Mewtwo right from the start. Now, another option is Tyranitar. I want to make this clear. If Mewtwo does have Aura Sphere or some other type of fighting type move, don't use Tyranitar. But if for some reason it doesn't have that, Tyranitar is going to be pretty good. So in terms of our actual boosting moves, we have Dragon Dance because it doesn't have Swords Dance, unfortunately, now. But we do have access to Crunch, Screech, and Snarl, so we can reduce Mewtwo's physical defense. And we have Snarl, again, to reduce that special attack. And Dragon Dance is going to make Tyranitar faster and increase its physical attack. So it is going to be able to, again, get those attacks off before Mewtwo, which is pretty big. The one thing, though, I think is great is that it has the ability Sandstream. So when it comes in, it's going to create a Sandstorm that's going to chip away at every Pokemon except itself, or any Steel or Ground or Rock-type Pokemon. So it is going to chip away at that Mewtwo, which is cool. But the real nice thing is that in Sandstream, Rock-type Pokemon get their special defense boosted. So it is going to make Tyranitar just a little more bulky. If Mewtwo does have those fighting moves, it's not going to be bulky enough to withstand it. I'm just going to throw that out there. But if Mewtwo doesn't have that for whatever reason and just has kind of some neutral, whatever attacks, then Tyranitar can take a lot of those pretty easily and really becomes a pretty significant threat to Mewtwo. And kind of in a similar vein to Tyranitar, we have Hydreigon. Now, Hydreigon notoriously has a lot of weaknesses, including fighting, but it does have some pretty cool options, again, available to it. It does have Levitate, so if Mewtwo does go for a ground-type attack, you're going to be immune to that, which is nice. And we do have Nasty Plot with Dark Pulse, which should be able to make very quick work of that Mewtwo. But we also have Snarl and Scary Face for the reasons we talked about before. Again, it's a lot of just kind of utility that gives you a lot of options for when you're on the field to kind of see what that Mewtwo is doing and sculpt a strategy around it accordingly. Now, the last Pokemon that I put together an option for is An unorthodox choice, certainly, but I think it has some interesting potential, and that's Lokix. Lokix does have fairly low stats, so I don't think it's amazing by any means, but if you can get it to level 100, it should be able to take a few hits from Mewtwo, and I think a few hits is all you need to take. So we have that Shell Bell. Obviously, we're going to be recovering HP, but Lokix also has access to Leech Life, which is going to be super effective with Stab because we are Bug Dark, so we're going to be recovering HP through that, and Shell Bell, so we can get back quite a lot of HP all at once. And if you're also taking a lot of damage and getting knocked down to like a third of your remaining HP, the ability Swarm is going to boost its Bug-type moves, so it is going to make that Leech Life even stronger so you recover more HP. Now, we are going to be rounding off its set with Swords Dance to make its attack as high as possible. We also have Skitter Smack to reduce Mewtwo's special attack, which is going to, again, give us a little more longevity. And we have Screech to reduce its defense to let us hit just that much harder with our Leech Life. But there you go, everybody. 12 different Pokemon that you can use in the Mewtwo raids that are going to be coming up on the 1st to make sure that you can take out that Mewtwo and add it to your team. Now remember, we only have about 2 weeks to go ahead and defeat that Mewtwo, so make sure you guys get into those battles, collect that Pokemon, and get all those goodies because it's not going to be around forever. But that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video and found it helpful, and I hope you're able to use one of these configurations to take down that Mewtwo and make that process just a little bit easier for you and your friends. So with that being said, if the video was helpful for you, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure that you impact that like button in the face, and of course consider subscribing to our channel because it really does help us out, and it lets YouTube know that you guys love our content. So that being said, everybody, I've been Blaine for Bridge4 Games. Thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with me. I hope you guys have an absolute blast in the Mewtwo raids, and until next time, I'll see you in the next video. See you around. Bye-bye.